the fiqh rulings between and the differences between mental and physical disabilities. So what I'm going to say about that is that their fiqh rulings are very case specific. So in the case of a mental disability, one who is defined as one who is just unable to either control their actions or their behaviors, or they may not have the comprehension if they have a mental disability. For these individuals, the scholars have said the majority of obligations have been dropped from them. You've heard the term that the pen has been lifted. Um, in my home, we refer to them as the people of Jannah, inshallah. So again, we're speaking specifically, case specific, about people with mental disabilities who cannot control their behavior, who cannot control their action, and many times cannot comprehend certain things about their deen. So examples of these obligations being lifted. So the first one, the obligation to pray is not there. Now, this is, again, not a blanket ruling. You would have to look at that loved one in your home. You would have to look at their level of comprehension, because if you've met someone, for example, with autism, you've met one person with autism. Do people with autism pray? Some of them do, yes, but it depends on their level of comprehension and what their mental capacity is. So this is for someone who has no comprehension and or very little comprehension of the meaning of this practice. And does this mean just because the obligation is dropped from them that we stop them from praying? No. Does this mean that we stop them from learning or participating in prayer or trying to pray? Not at all. They're just not sinful if they don't pray. So that's one example. Another example would be fasting, which would be very relevant right now. We get this question all the time. If there are types of mental disability where the person, just may not understand the concept of fasting. They may not be able to control themselves and just go ahead and, grab a bite to eat or a sip of water. Well, that person, if they fit into this category or this case, they are not required to fast. And if they want to, they certainly can. In fact, it was so beautiful. We were at the Muhsen Center yesterday doing a service project, and two of the participants actually were fasting. And mashallah, they understood the idea and they wanted to give it a try, and they were fasting. So should we encourage it if someone is eager? Absolutely, absolutely. But this ruling can also be dropped when someone comes along with a mental disability. An example I also give to people is that Hajj is not obligated on these folks with mental disabilities. It's just not an obligation. But I've, in my own personal experience, had a beautiful experience of taking my daughter, to Umrah several times. And I can tell you that more than once, I witnessed her connection to Allah as clearly as one could. And probably the most important message here, and that I'm going to speak about today is, and this is to phrase, the scholars, we should never underestimate the spiritual ability of one with a disability or their connection with Allah. We cannot ever underestimate that. And what they can experience. And that's exactly what our family experienced taking our loved one to Umrah. And that's an important thing, is looking at the individual. The other point I want to make about this, the onus is on the people around the individual, their family, their community around them, to care for them. Remember, if this is someone who is not always able to control their actions, their behaviors, we as a community and as family need to make it our goal to give them the best quality of life possible. The key is to not isolate, exclude, or ignore them, as they have rights upon us as our brothers and sisters. So this is very, very important. That's our responsibility. Since, again, we talked about them as possibly not being able to comprehend and make decisions for themselves. Now, let's jump quickly to the case of physical disabilities. The scholars tell us that the obligations are relaxed, but still binding for those with physical disabilities. So what does that mean? That one still has to fulfill whatever is possible in their physical capacity. For example, you've heard, if you can't stand to pray due to a physical limitation, you can sit and you can pray. If you can't sit even to pray, you can lie down and pray. And even furthermore, those who have the difficulty, Allah bless them, who can't even move, those people are permitted to pray with their eyes, as long as they can comprehend their prayer. So there's a lot of ease in our deen, and these answers are available, and there's a lot of knowledge out there, and Allah knows best.